That bell marks the official start of our meeting this evening, and I would certainly like to welcome everybody from around the world. We've got about 9 different countries represented on the screen, and how our little club draws 9 different countries, I'll never know. Randall and I haven't figured that one out yet, but we certainly appreciate people from all over the world joining us. Thank you very, very much. That's what inspires our small club to keep going, and our goal is to keep on trying to find new speakers and good speakers that come in and give you information. So we're going to have another good one this evening, and I'm sure he's going to have a lot of interesting things to say to us. But as we start our meeting, some of you already know, let's see if I got my screen share. One of the things we do is we do our 4-way test, but I've added something new tonight before we do our 4-way test. I just want to share with you a little bit about our St. Petersburg Club. We were founded in 2004, and there are 4 other Russian-speaking clubs in St. Petersburg. We're the only English one. There's 77 clubs in our district of 2223, and of course, you know there's over 33,000 clubs around the world. You're Rotarians, you know those things. At our meetings, you often will hear people speaking in Russian, German, or other languages, which is okay, but we primarily try to stick to English in our meetings whenever we can. We're very active and dedicated Rotarians here. Our club was larger, and now because of the pandemic, several of our expats have left, and now our club is much smaller. But we still are busy people in our local community, trying to help with a cerebral palsy center where children need help. And we just finished the bench project last fall. And there's many other small things that we're working on, but we're very, very active. I just wanted you all to know just a little bit about our club. You don't need to know everything about it. If you knew everything about it, you might be frightened, but that's okay. When our club gets started each week, we want to remind people about the 4-way test. So I'm going to go through the 4-way test, and I would like for all of you to please turn on your microphones at this time. Will everybody turn on your microphone, please? I'll give you a moment to do that. We're going to go through the 4-way test. I will read each one of the 4, and then I would ask all of you to repeat it after I finish, just like we see it on the screen. The first one, is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Is it fair to all concerned?
Is it fair to all concerned?
Will it build goodwill and better friendship?
Will it build goodwill and better friendship?
And will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Will it be beneficial to all local concerned?
Thank you all very, very much for participating. You can turn your microphones off now, and so that our speakers will be able to not be interrupted by noises in the area. We ask that you please keep your microphone off until it is time for you to speak, or when we get into the questions and answer session, certainly you can turn it on and ask questions. And we have a speaker tonight, and I'm sure he's going to be able to answer some of our questions, because some of you already have written to me and told me you had questions. So Paul, get ready after you get done speaking, because there's a few people that want more information from you. So they're going to be asking when you finish speaking. Again, our club is here in St. Petersburg, and it's very small, but we try to be dynamic. And the way we do that is by reaching out to all of you. Now, recently we have found that some of the ICCs are interested in connecting with us. So we will be getting back with some of you next week and reaching out, because I hope that myself or Randall, either one of us, or maybe both of us, would like to visit your ICC meetings when we can, and be a guest speaker, because we have lots of different things that we can talk about that may be interesting to your ICCs. So if in fact you're looking for a speaker, let us know. For the rest of you who are club members around the world, if your club is looking for a speaker, I have gone to several already, Rotary clubs and Toastmasters clubs, and been a guest speaker. We'll be happy to come on board. Primarily, I usually talk about leadership, but I also can talk about the connection between Rotary and Toastmasters, how that works and what the benefit is for everybody. So if you're interested, send us a note, you get our emails from Randall being sent out to you, notifying you of the meetings. Just respond back and we can fix that up. I was just down. I'm not going to tell you what I got out of it, but it was wonderful. I was just down in Houston, Texas last week at a hybrid meeting and gave a presentation down there at a Rotary meeting, and it was their noontime. Of course, for me, it was very late in the evening, but that's fine. But something exciting happened. And when I talk about our projects a little bit later this evening, I'll tell you what happened. It's a very positive thing going in the right direction. So we're small, but we're reaching out, and you folks are the ones who are helping us be successful. Without you, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing now. So I'm going to pass it over to our secretary and let our secretary give us his comments. So, Mr. Secretary, will you please step in and do your thing?
Later you will. Thank you very much, Michael. My pleasure to have a moment, and I would like to share some notes. They're very brief. Let me share the screen here, please. Secretary's notes for today. First of all, last week I mentioned that there is a District 2223 project. We are in District 2223. For anybody who is visiting us, that means all of Russia. This project started on the 9th of January, and it's a skiing challenge to raise money to end polio. And it's being led in our district by Rotaractors and Rotarians working together. You can see on the screen, there is a link to a challenge where one can donate. You'll see that actually that's on a platform called raise.rotary.org. So it's a fundraising platform for Rotarians running projects. And below that, you can see there's also a chat around this project, which is on Telegram. On the screen, you can see our DG, our District Governor Ildes from Kazan, who's participating in this. And the next slide, you can see my friend, past President Elena Kharchenko from the Vladivostok Eco Rotary Club. She's very much, I have a special guest here, by the way.
Hi.
So we have, she is a avid outdoors woman, and she's very active in this project. And there is a video, but I won't show the video because technically it might not work out too well. Oh, I did.
There's no sound here.
Yeah, no audio.
Oh, so never mind. I move on. Next thing I want to mention, again, I mentioned it last week, that on the 30th of January, we are invited by our colleagues in District 2232, which is Belarus and Ukraine, to join a basically all-day event. It's an international vocational forum. There's a link at the bottom here. It requires prior registration. It's free. If anyone wants to join, you're more than welcome to do so. Third, Felix. Felix in the room still? Felix.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. So Felix has invited us to join something. Unfortunately, the first visit happened a couple of days ago on Monday, but this is a part of a series of events. And his club, which I believe we pronounce it Modin?
Modin, yes.
Modin. So his club is inviting English-speaking Rotarians to go on virtual tours of Israel. And these will take place twice a month. There's a link at the bottom, which also requires prior registration. Felix, would you like to say something more?
The next one will be in Jaffa at the 8th of February. And everybody can come and visit us now online, but we hope that after the Corona, all the Rotarians are invited to visit us physically. Modin is a city between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, half an hour to Tel Aviv and half an hour to Jerusalem. And we'd like to see all of the participants visit us physically. Thank you.
Felix, do you get more sunshine than St. Petersburg? That's what my wife wants. She wants more sunshine.
Yeah.
Okay, next. Let me get to the next slide here. Next week, we have a speaker who has visited our club before. His name is Dmitry Orlov. He is a writer, and I would say he's a futurist who has written many books on many different subjects. So he's a very multi-talented person. He's going to be speaking since he moved back to Russia a couple of years ago. He's very much actively looking at the future of Russia compared with the rest of the world. So from a geopolitical standpoint and more. And he will be speaking to us about what he sees the future holding for Russia. And then the next week after that, Gabriela has invited a guest who is a very interesting man, Reinhard Kuhn, call sign DK5LA. And he is going to give us a presentation about the Chinese mission to the moon, which is quite fascinating that someone in, I think, small town Germany has been very actively involved in helping the Chinese plan their mission to the moon. And finally, my last slide. Again, we need everyone's help. So if you have any friends in St. Petersburg who are potentially interested in Rotary, please invite them to join our meetings. If you have any people you think might be interested in speaking to us, please let me know. And if anybody who we could add to our mailing list, please tell me. That's all. Over to you, President Michael. As soon as I can stop sharing here. Where's my mouse? Okay, come on.
Randall, can you put that, Rand? Okay, that's all right. In the last slide there, thank you, Randall. In the last slide, he was also putting on there for speakers. We are still looking for more speakers. We do have some lined up for the next few weeks, but we're looking at the end of February and into March as to who we can get to come in as speakers. And for most of you already know, because you're our friends, you've been online with us, we've had past presidents, we've had international directors, we've had all kinds of people who come in and talk about very, very interesting items. So if you know someone who you think has an interesting presentation that you think our group of Rotarians would love to hear, then let us know and we'll pursue that and try to get that person to be on board and join us as a speaker. We want to expound that or make it bigger if we can. We want to get into the habit of providing all of you with very good speakers for your enjoyment when you come here with the presentation. Let me get out of my own way. I'm in my own way here. Okay. Our speaker tonight is going to be Paul Goncharoff. Now, he's a man about the world, not just about the city, but he's a man about the world. Started out in Manhattan, went to school in the United States, came to Russia, decided that Russia needed some help. Since he's been here, he has worked with many of the larger companies, the top management, in trying to give them things such as corporate governance, corporate management, leadership within companies, and he's been working with many of them for a long, long time. He just mentioned to us tonight that earlier, when we first came on, that he's going to get his, I believe he said his Russian citizenship, if I'm not mistaken. And so
residency.
Citizenship. Okay. All right. So he's going to be with us for a while here in Russia, maybe a long, long while. But I think you're going to find that here we have an individual who is in a position to influence people on both sides of the world, Russia and the United States, and somebody who has a perspective on the United States and a perspective on Russia. There are not a lot of people who have that kind of experience or that kind of ability. So I think it's going to be interesting in listening to his presentation tonight. He's going to be talking to us and explaining what are some of the possibilities going forward. So I don't want to take up any more of his time. Paul, if you'll give us about 35 to 40 minutes of your presentation, then we'll open it up for questions and answers at the end. So I'll turn this over to Paul and it's all yours.
Well, thank you very much. It's a very personal privilege to be invited, and I'll tell you why. My father, Dr. Nicholas Goncharoff, was a speaker for Rotary, including the national and international conferences, since 1953. At that time, he was with the UN and Radio Free Europe. He did a broadcast into Soviet Russia. And in the United States, he was very active. In fact, as a small child, I remember he had a number of occasions to go to Rotary conventions. This was before online was even heard of. So I'm glad to continue to help continue. I hope I can even do a third of as well as he does. But maybe a little background is in order. I was born in the States, in New York, as was mentioned. And I first went to the Soviet Union as part of the Statesmanship 7 program in the United States. If we'll recall a little bit, that detente was happening in those years. And coming to the Soviet Union was an experience. Nothing was as it seemed, and very little was as it was described to me in the United States. And I didn't like it much, quite honestly. I much preferred living in New York or elsewhere. But as time went on and relationships developed, the business climate improved, there were aspects of the evolving Russia that was very attractive to me, not only financially, but experientially. And I noticed a large disconnect between what I saw with my own eyes here on the ground, and I'm based in Moscow, although I've spent a lot of time in just about every other urban area and suburban area throughout the ex-Soviet Union. There's a great deal of, obviously, misunderstanding, and signals are just missed. Maybe it has to do with language, and it's a simple little thing like that, but it plays a huge role, because language is what connects each and every one of us to the cultures that we're comfortable with. And comfort, of course, is something that sometimes defines the difference between our version of right and wrong, good or bad, acceptable or unacceptable. So fast forward, here we are today, doing business in Russia has been an incredibly rewarding experience, because there's something new every day. There's a challenge that you have to handle. And experiences the likes of which nowhere else perhaps on the planet. Maybe I'll go back a little bit. I was working for a while for Michael Hodorkovsky and Platon Lebedev with the Yukos. I was heading up all their insurance companies. There was Yukos Garant, Progress Garant, after having left AIG here in Russia. And I noticed that the business they made every effort to structure it as transparently as possible, as to international standards. But the one standard that they didn't really consider is that you don't step on the toe. Either you do business or you do politics. And I was in a privileged position of being able to see both sides of the coin at that time. And what can I say? It's a graduate school education in geopolitics. So that, I guess, is one out of many examples of why I'm still here, why I've enjoyed living in Russia and still enjoy living in Russia, is that there is really always a large question that has to be dealt with and handled. I don't know of any other place in the world that has that sort of an opportunity. And here, now that the sanctions have been already now almost standardized, I'm looking back at the effect of what have sanctions given us? Well, they've served to crystallize it in the eyes of many what the role of politics is in business. And unfortunately, I don't think that the result is all that great. But from the Russian standpoint, what it has done is it enabled a lot of businesses to re-examine themselves, their connection to the world at large, their whole perception of globalism, and where their priorities are in terms of connection. Hence, we're seeing a large shift to China, to Asia, to countries other than those underneath the umbrella of the United States and the US dollar. So this is creating a lot of new challenges as we're going away from the accepted norms of the US always being right and the US dollar being the biggest and the best, which it is, but it's getting a little bit worn, as we see now with the increased use of cryptocurrencies, which I'm still trying to get my head around. And of course, using sovereign currencies in bilateral trade, like ruble, yuan, euro, ruble, and so forth. So big changes are happening in front of our eyes now. And we're all on the train. So it's important that we all communicate with each other as best we can. Now, guys, I'm a businessman. I'm not really a lecturer. Whether what I just said makes sense or not, I'd like to put that on the table. I'd rather answer questions, which maybe would also be more useful to you instead of my worldview. Hello?
Okay, yeah, okay, Paul, we can do that. I know that David Fishman, if you'll turn on your microphone, I know that David's got a couple questions for you, Paul.
Yes, thank you,
Alrighty.
Michael. Paul, I have not the same cultural connection to Russia as you do, but for 30 years now, I've been involved with Russian friends and colleagues, starting in 1989 when the American Bar Association had the Soviet Lawyer Internship Project, which brought young Russian and Ukrainian and Georgian and Estonian lawyers to the US, and many of them have become friends for life. Several of them are still living in Moscow and St. Petersburg and elsewhere in Russia. And so it's a wonderful experience to have these long ties. The question I want to ask you is, in your professional capacities, have you run into entities such as the American Chamber of Commerce in Russia, US-Russia Business Council, the European equivalents, and also the Skolkovo people? When I came over for the ABA on the Obama-Medvedev Innovation Working Group, I met some wonderful people connected with Skolkovo in the legal profession.
Well, yes to all of the above. In order to look forward, let's look back a little bit. There used to be a thing called the US-USSR Trade and Economic Council. I was, this was back in the late 70s. I was the first, I guess, member who was under the age of 25. And ever since then, I have always been engaged. That evolved into the US-Russia entity. As far as AmCham goes, at the beginning of Perestroika, I was very engaged with them. But frankly, they became almost immaterial once the sanctions occurred. Their value today is lobbying, and lobbying for very specific interest groups that are important to us as Americans. You know, on the behalf of John Deere or behalf of Dow or any one of the companies that are well established here. It just gives a bit more clout. So they're most valuable entity, but I'd say they were much more valuable when it was free and open trade.
Okay.
Hello?
All right. Does anyone else would like to raise their hand, and we'll find out what your question is for Paul? Anybody else have a question? Edward. You're muted, Edward. Unmute, please.
Got it? Okay, I got it. I have a question here for Paul. I really appreciate his sense of adventure in Russia. When I came to Russia, it was a little bit sense of adventure, the same like for him, but he was in Russia since the beginning when the business, real business was starting. And my question is, what kind of business, what was your first business, Paul, you started in Russia when you first came?
Well, okay, when I first arrived, there was the platinum group metals, platinum, palladium, rhodium, iridium, ruthenium. And the reason was because if we'll wind back the clock, this was when America was going on to unleaded fuels. And that required catalytic converters by the car manufacturers. And at that time, there was sanctions, again, in South Africa, which forced us as Americans to go elsewhere. And the only other producer of note was the Soviet Union, a little bit in Canada. So sanctions brought the Soviet Union in a big way onto the world of catalytic converters and the platinum, palladium, the whole Norilsk saga grew out of that. And it all came out of the Soviet structures. It was known as Almaz Juvelir Export back then. But now it's on its own and doing quite well. But that's what brought me here was precious metals. And then I got involved in other precious metals such as gold, silver, energy, oil, just about everything. It's been like a roller coaster, or in Russian, that's Amerikanskie gorki. And as the boom and bust happened here, my career was affected. We had the default. I had to liquidate a company that I had that was manufacturing microwave medical equipment just because it bankrupted. And I took over AIG. I was asked by AIG New York to run AIG Russia. So these things, it's just been magical. And I thank whoever looks over us on us with a smile to give me such opportunities.
Thank you, Paul. Randall, you had a question.
That's how it all began.
Randall, you have a question?
Yes, Michael, I have a question. Paul, you mentioned that you have traveled throughout quite a large expanse of Russia. And here we are sitting in St. Petersburg, some of us sitting in Moscow. And we always think about St. Petersburg and Moscow, but what are the opportunities, do you think, for the second tier, third tier cities in Russia to go forward in the next decade or two?
Let me tell you, the one I just got back from, I spent about 7 months on Sakhalin, which is the island off of Vladivostok, very close to Japan. And it's mostly known for oil and gas, which is developing tremendously, but there's a huge effort, and it's so under the radar that most Russians are not aware of what's happening there. Very quietly, a bridge tunnel, let's call it, a link between the mainland of Russia and Sakhalin is being built as we're speaking. Rail service that will link the Trans-Siberian and the Russian rail network to Sakhalin. I give it 1.5 years, maximum 2 years, and it'll be working. The whole internal infrastructure of the island is being actively developed, and the opportunities are massive, because following on to that is a plan between the Sakhalin government, Moscow, and Japan, depending on geopolitics, to possibly do the same thing and link southern Sakhalin to Hokkaido, the northernmost island of Japan. That would be a significant feather in the cap of the general Asian Belt and Road project. So the Far East of Russia is really what's boiling right now.
Okay, thank you. Rami, you got your hand up?
Yes, hello. Hi, Paul. So I have a question. What would be your advice for young entrepreneurs who have come from outside of Russia and who are trying to build base in Russia? Like what are, I know this is a very general question and too wide. Okay, probably like 1 to 3 things that from your experience.
Well, you've got to come here.
Yeah.
You got to come here. Bring your brain, bring your plan.
Paul, let me
Yeah.
interrupt just for a second. Rami is from UAE. He does live in St. Petersburg now, and he does speak Russian now. So that's his situation.
Well, that answers a lot of questions, but is there a reason why are you experiencing difficulties outside of the COVID situation, or just general business?
Essentially, I find Russia very interesting for me, and I want to know what 1 to 3 tips I always need to keep in mind that I can navigate through this. I think there are many opportunities in Russia in terms of service sector, for example.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
many, like that's what I see, for example. Yeah. What else, for example?
Just about anything. Look, I think one of the where you're located now is a high competition area. Okay, St. Petersburg, the whole Northwest, Moscow, same thing. It's like, look, let me maybe put it a different way. A lot of people, when they're looking at America, they say, "Oh, I'm going to make it in New York." You know, Frank Sinatra sang about it. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, right? In Russia, that may be the easiest way to go, because the sources of finance in St. Petersburg or Moscow or Ekaterinburg are more approachable and available. But the standards for accessing financing or cooperation are also much higher. The answer you generally hear is, well, prove it to me, докажи, right? Well, you can't докажи anything, you can't prove anything unless you got something on the ground, right? And I find that in that respect, the farther you get away from the classic Russia, being European Russia, and further out to the Far East, the far more opportunities and available capital too. The Far East Development Fund. I don't know, have you looked into any of these Russian programs? They're actually, I've seen it with my own eyes. I didn't believe it before. They're actually putting their money where their mouth is, if there is a good program. And they're looking at it in the context of what that can do to help develop regions, such as Primorsky Krai, Magadan area, Amur area, Sakhalin, right? It's like the old saying from the last century: "Go west, young man." Well, in this case, go east. Right?
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you, Paul. Another hand up. Anybody else have a question? Yes. DF, go ahead.
Hi, Michael. I'm Daniel. I'm sure you remember.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, Paul. Nice talking to you and to everyone here this evening.
Same.
I'm also an entrepreneur. I'm working mainly in technology, and I'd like to hear your opinion on where do you see the biggest opportunities here in Russia to bring technologies, or what kind of technologies do you think could be mostly successfully placed in the market, in oil and gas or other industries, or where do you see the biggest opportunities to go?
Well, the immediacy right now is the replacement technology business, both in heavy machinery, processing technologies. Why I say this? For instance, a number of Eastern European countries used to make our OEMs for American companies that utilized their components, right? and assemble in the States or elsewhere under license. I've noticed in the past 2-3 years, but intensely this past year, of the reverse happening, of OEMs overseas or technology providers coming to countries such as Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, Russia, and doing the reverse, buying the single components from what they call the European American belt and assembling them here, largely to get around the sanctions because they're not American products,
Right.
or German products or whatever. They're something else. I don't know if that is clear, if I am expressing myself clearly, but in these niche opportunities, I see, in these niche situations, I see a lot of opportunity. Also in the oil and gas. I'll give you one example. There's a company called Gas Techno Energy, which is a one-step flare to methanol process. Well, there's a lot of flaring in Russia. What, due to sanctions, can't do that one-step process. Instead, it's a huge, very top-heavy, expensive three-step process used in Russia. Well, I predict that these one-step processes or different technologies will find their way here, one way or another, and will become nuts and bolts hardware, which also requires the whole software aspect. But that Russia, I think, is well supplied with in terms of IT talent. But this is one of the immediate things that I can answer with.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Paul. Anybody else have a question? Several people on here from around the world. You have a question? I don't see any hands up, so I'll ask a question now while you think about another question, and then someone can go after me. Paul, I have a question for you. I came to Russia to help people implement lean technology, the Toyota production system. And I've been here 15 years and worked with several of the very large companies here to make that happen. About 5 years ago, I switched a little bit into more of leadership, because what I found, companies who were trying to improve had leadership deficiencies. The leadership skills of the people at the top of the companies were not as good as they needed to be. So they asked me to start teaching them leadership, which I've been doing. Do you think that's still a need here in Russia for top managers and leaders to get that? Or do you think that they have their own version of it and would resist an outsider on it?
Well, I don't know if it's so much resistance. Well, yeah, it's the Western expertise has been overdone today. I say this, I was a founding member of the Independent Directors Association here in Russia, and part of the Transparency and Good Governance Code of the Russian Federation. And I've noticed year after year since I began this in the late 90s that there's a lot that Russians can teach Western companies and Asian companies about management.
Mm-hmm.
That's not saying that they don't need a lot of work. They do. There's a cultural aspect of management, especially non-diversified management companies that are still run like a one-man show. And that'll always be there. But the older a lot of these one-man show people get, the more they realize that they have to do some succession planning, and that means diversifying the management structures, and that does mean leadership training, and it does mean learning what the different types of management roles there are. Yeah. So I think there is a need for it. It's being addressed,
right?
I guess as much as it can be.
Okay. Yeah, I agree there.
Remember,
we're
in odd times right now.
Right. I worked with Gazprom, and I also worked at RZD and a few of the other large ones. And I found that some people in the step had what they needed, and others were just thrown in to fill as managers and didn't have what they needed. So it was a combination of both. So not a big problem. I was just curious about it.
Well, look, yeah, look, this is one of the a real hot item when many of the Russian holdings and all were looking for foreign direct investment was doing the decorating so that the boards were nicely appointed.
Right.
You know, several independent directors. If they can find a LB, lesbian or gay, whatever member, fantastic. You know, all of the bells and whistles.
Right.
That just addressed the surface. Right. Thankfully, over time, and perhaps the real accelerator was 2014 with the sanctions against Russia because of Crimea. And really did force many of the Russian companies to get serious. And they did. And you can see that now through the reporting and the assessments through the Moscow exchange and the international acceptance of those companies traded on the exchange, publicly traded. It's a world of difference between today and even 5 years ago.
Very good. Thank you. Randall, you've got your hand up for a question.
Thank you, Michael. I have another question. Paul, you just mentioned something that I thought about before, which is succession. Many of the companies that were started 25 years ago are now a quarter century old. The founder probably led it from concept through all the struggles to make it into a world-class company, and he has a couple of kids. How big a challenge is it for these Russian companies that started up to pass on the leadership legacy to the next generation? Is there a pool of people that can actually manage the companies for them?
Well, that is the conundrum, and that's the process that is ongoing now. Look, can you still see me?
Yes, yes, we can see you.
Yeah. I had a little bit of a, there we go. No, that's associations like the Independent Directors Association and the other management groups and consulting companies are offering services to owner operators of how to handle succession planning, how to set up the executive management for the future. It's a hot item. A lot of money is being spent on that. But then again, culture. The guys who I know anyway, the oligarchs who I've worked with, they all want to see either the daughter or the son in there or their best friends. There's, nepotism is still there. And in some cases it does have a role, especially in a society that's structured the way this one is, as in some cases a very positive role. But it's changing. And as far as a business opportunity, that is one. But you have to be, again, it's that show me. To be a trusted, to get involved in that requires trust, and to be a trusted advisor.
Okay. Yes, David.
Well, a comment that illustrates your point, I think. For the last 4 years, an organization called the Russian Arbitration Association has co-hosted with the American Bar Association section of International Law, the Moscow Dispute Resolution Conference. This is an entity that is sort of a mini ABA focused on arbitration matters. In other words, it's not across the board. But these are Russian men and women in business and legal and other spheres that engage in commercial arbitration. And, they've been leading this conference for the last 4 years, along with the section of International Law, the American Bar Association.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Kai, you had a question?
This is where we, the hope, and we have to rely on these sort of organizations.
My question, thank you, President Michael. My question to Paul is a little bit in direction as the previous as well. So we are somehow in a like an end of a cycle or end of a season. So things are changing, new generations are coming. And Russia, if you see it fundamentally, it's maybe in the best position. There's a lot of resources, a lot of land. Will probably not so badly affected by the climate change, maybe even get profit from it. It has educated people, but still people feel like on a doorstep to big crisis, like the rubble went down again and the how to say, the real estate goes up, but it doesn't fit with the money in the people's pockets. So many things are unclear. So what is your personal feeling, or how will it end? Will we see a big crisis, or will we see some extension of this phase what we have had the last 20 years? How where are we going? What's your opinion?
Well, look, you know, Vladimir Putin had an interesting comment when he was asked about global warming. And he says, well, you can look at it in a nihilistic manner, or you can look at it, the fact that Russia is getting an additional 1.5 to 2 months growth season, which for agriculture, which is, it's a boom time for Russian agriculture. So, you know, it depends on how you look at it. I'm not going to judge which is more, you know, morally or ethically correct, but financially, Russia's doing rather well from climate change. I see Russia being viewed as really an island of, and please, I'll probably get a lot of backlash from this, but an island of relative calm in a rather crazily changing world. Russians are doing their business pretty much under the radar. It's interesting. Last week, I had an opportunity. Well, I had to run out of town for a bit to take a look at one of the new gas turbine factories, Saturn, which essentially took over what GE used to have, but did it without much noise, without much fanfare. And now Russia doesn't need gas turbines. It makes its own. A lot of these sort of moments that, I don't know, I have very few worries for Russia. As you said, resources, human resources, desire, and quite frankly, the need. They've got nowhere to go. Right? They've got to make good.
Okay. All right. Another question from somebody. Edward, you have another question. Go ahead.
I totally agree with Paul about this, what he was saying about Russia. I have a question about the estate market. What is your opinion on the estate market prediction?
Real estate.
Real estate market, yeah. Moscow, St. Petersburg, or other parts of Russia. You think the price is gonna raise in the future? Or how you see it? Just your personal opinion as a businessman.
My personal opinion, I don't invest in real estate. I don't. I own what I own for what I need. I'm much more invested either in the precious metals or today in the various DeFi projects that are out there. In fact, I do consulting for 2 of them using cryptocurrencies.
You do?
And that I see a huge interest here among Russian businesses, because the future is there if global business is going to be less fettered by a sovereign currency or a fiat currency or a nation state. So this is my my vision. I hope I'm right.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? No? One more, Randall. Go ahead.
So one more on a completely different topic, but also, I guess, related to the size of Russia, but you mentioned global warming. And I'm curious, Paul, what do you think about the exploitation of the northern route through the Arctic? Do you think that's going to have big implications in the future? Because
It
Russia
already
seems
is. It already is. I've written a number of papers about that on, if anyone fishes around is interested, on one word, russiaknowledge.com. Sometimes I write not as a writer, but just opinions. And the North Sea route is something that I've written at length about. And the numbers are astounding. And having been on Sakhalin and involved in maritime affairs, it's been growing rather strongly year after year for the past 10 years. But now it's already getting muscles. It's mostly large volume bulk transport, but this year was the first year that container ships have moved from Asia through to Europe by the North Sea route. And that's a historic first. So it is viable, and it obviates the need for the Suez.
Okay, very
So
good.
if you looked at it geopolitically, it also has ramifications geopolitically, as it reduces the sensitivity that the Suez region might play, especially for China.
Okay, thank you. Kai, you had another question?
Yes, one more question. Thank you very much. I'm not sure if Paul knows it, but we have a big crowd from Canada here in the meeting. And my question is, how would you compare like Canada and Russia? So for me, some things are in common, like from geography and so on.
Well, yes, yeah. I used to work for a company, a Canadian company called Falconbridge Nickel, that did platinum in Sudbury area. But look, much of Canada, look, it's the same latitudes or similar latitudes. Very, very chilly, and also the distances. There's a huge similarity. But Canada is a bit more developed, but there's also the similarity of the North Sea route, north of Canada, which also has a role to play, and it will in time. Just keep that one in mind.
Okay. Yeah, Andres, you have a question?
Again, if
sorry, Paul. Andres, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. President. Paul, I'm living in Russia since 2008, working here, spearheading a small service company. I'm fully in line what you said and the colleagues were asking. However, what I see, and you mentioned it, that the production apparatus in this country is aging. And I'm not talking about the high sophisticated, like you were talking about the gas turbines. I'm talking about the average. What I'm missing and what I don't see, maybe I'm wrong, is the willingness to save money, to modernize these production apparatus, to be more efficient, and with the more efficiency to be more competitive in the internal as well as on the world market. Why is that so that these motivation to modernize, to look after the things, to keep them in a good order is missing? Maybe my perception is wrong, but I have seen...
No, I think you're quite right. I think you're right. But I think we should take a step back and let me now, as an American, say this. I remember in the 70s, I was just getting involved in the metals, granted in the precious metals, but the big problem was the aging US steel industry. And everyone saw it coming. It was a huge train wreck just waiting to happen. Pittsburgh was gutted. All the big steel centers were just trashed. And who was to blame? Japan, Germany, all of whom were retooled after World War II. And this is basic economics. They were on the leading edge of well-invested infrastructure. Well, it required a collapse in the US steel industry in order to do mini mills, the latest generation of steel production. And slowly, slowly, it's pulling itself back up again. Look, planning in advance is not a human trait, although we all talk about it. Actually putting the money down to modernize an industry, until it collapses, I don't think there are very many that think that far ahead. But eventually they do.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Paul, I have a comment, and I want to agree with you on something when you were talking about Russia being in a good condition. I've worked in 42 different cities across Russia in the last 15 years, teaching lean to folks. And because I taught so many, these people turned around and taught other companies. And I find now that many of the companies I go to are already started doing lean technology, maybe not as good as they could, certainly not as good as Toyota, but going in that direction. And it's spread across the whole country, not only here. I was just recently talking to people in Irkutsk that were my customers before, and they were telling me how well they're doing. So I'm hearing it from all different corners of Russia where processes are being improved, continuous improvement is going on, and the Russian group of people that were my students before have gone out and really done well in establishing themselves and offering that all over Russia now. So I think that Russia is going in the right direction. How long, how far, I don't know, but I'm older than most of the people on the screen. There might be one or two older, but I still have in the back of my head that thought that what's going to happen when we have a governmental change? What's going to happen to Russia the day that Putin steps down and somebody else steps in? I'm curious your opinion about that. And if you don't want to speak about it because you're still here and working, that's fine. We understand. But in my mind, I'm still thinking about what's going to happen that day when there's a major hierarchical change at the top of the government in Russia. What is your opinion?
Well, look, that's one of the reasons why I'm still enjoying it here, is I can still speak my mind and not get whacked.
Okay.
Look, it's gonna be a problem. I clearly remember when Brezhnev was running the Soviet Union, and the changeover to Chernenko, no, Andropov, Chernenko, Gorbachev. I knew Boris Yeltsin rather well and his family. I remember those times. I remember the changeover from Yeltsin to Putin. Everyone's like, oh my God, what a wise decision, actually. Look, there is a process, there is a form of a democratic process at play here. It's just not our form. By our, I mean American, maybe, or a British or Canadian. But it's very much of a top-down Q&A that happens at several levels, both federal and municipal. And I've got a feeling, also knowing some of the players that are in the federal government today, that it will occur when it occurs without all that much angst. I believe that there is some forward planning happening, at least in this, because there are too many interests involved to leave it to the whims of fate.
Okay.
And, you know, like it or not, democracy, I'm an American. I appreciate that structure. And it works at that point in time when it works. Russia is different. It's another culture. It's another structure. I wouldn't like to see what's happening, what happened just now in DC, happen here.
Yeah.
That's my comment.
No, that's fine. Thank you. And I appreciate you being willing to speak on that subject, because I don't know about the rest of the people on the screen, but I would imagine all of us have at one time or another just asked ourselves, with the continuation of Putin in his sessions, one after the other, when they end, what will happen? And we just kind of go on by that question and do our normal life and forget about it. But it does cross our mind once in a while, because I think we're all a little bit concerned. Just as right now, the Americans are concerned about the transition from Trump to Biden, same idea. But this one has been going on for a long time, and we are interested in finding out more about it. Thank you. Any other questions on the floor? If not, I'll give you a chance to comment in just a moment, Paul. Any other questions? Oh, and Gabriella. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you very much, Paul. It was really interesting what you told us. What do you expect regarding the economic cooperation after Joe Biden came in? Trump started with saying America first. I do not think that Biden will change. What impact will it have on Russia?
Well, frankly, very little. I think very little. That's lightly said, but okay, just from my subjective viewpoint, I no longer have a single American client, not a single company that's US based that I work with anymore. Not because I don't want to, but they're not doing the business here. And all of those that I've dealt with have been replaced. I now deal with Chinese, Vietnamese companies, German companies, Finnish companies, Myanmar companies. Good Lord, I've never even been there. But India. It's the world is going its merry way. And you know what? And one thing that it really interested in me this year, this is the first year that I haven't seen or signed a contract in US dollars. Not one. Not one. And that, I never would have thought I'd live to see that day. So there is, things are changing. Yeah. Whether Biden does, a MAGA program or whatever, I think Russia's moving on. It's no longer as affected by opinion of whether it'll go over well with the USA or not.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Paul. For all of us, let's give Paul, Edward, you got a short question or a long one, Edward?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. A short question on business, please, Paul. We see here Russia become self-efficient on many ways through the sanction, thanks in fact to Americans and Europeans. They started long ago. In your opinion as a business person, what are the three sectors now Russia is still deficient in be self-efficient?
Well, okay, what I've seen with my eyes now, this might sound strange, but it would be great to see Israel more involved in Russia with its agricultural technologies in terms of getting the most bang for the buck. Agro sector. What else? Small and medium machinery. Licensing the manufacturing of more advanced production machinery here. Not these, as was mentioned, not the huge gas turbines, but mid and small level tooling. That's an opportunity. And good Lord, I don't know, anything that would make, look, service industry as a whole is something that encompasses a lot, but there are areas here, it's becoming more and more evident with the COVID-19 that are being outsourced. Anything from taxes to consulting to whatever, this is a huge area. And even when everyone gets injected like we have, we're not going to get rid of the distance doing business through the internet. It's just going to increase. So this is an area that Russia needs just because of its dimensions. You know, you can't really do business with Vladivostok when you're sitting in St. Petersburg, you know, not regularly. So these are things to think about.
Thank you, Paul. For all of us, I'd like everybody, let's give Paul a very nice round of applause for his time and effort. Thank you, Paul. You have a wealth of knowledge inside that head of yours, and I hope you stay with us for a long time. I don't mean just tonight. I'm talking about here in Russia as an American citizen helping Russian, because we feel that that is a key player. Our Rotary Club and Rotary Club in Moscow, there's an English one there also. Often we get asked questions like similar to what you're asking, because we have an American viewpoint or a Canadian viewpoint, and they want to know how it mixes with the Russians. So we really appreciate your comments tonight and what you had to say. So if you'll hang on, we'll just get through a little bit more business we have in the club. And then at the end, if anybody else wants to chat a little bit, we'll be able to do that. We got about 15 more minutes for our meeting to continue. So I need to move on. I changed my screen, and I want to talk just briefly about our projects. I mentioned at the beginning that I went to Houston, Texas by way of online to a meeting there and talked to them. Most of you already know that the Children's Rehabilitation Center used to be the Romanoff Center for helping children with cerebral palsy. And it's our club's project now that we're going forward with. Andres Bone, our finance man was on here screen with us here. He is the heads up on that project. I went there and told them a little bit about the project, and they said, Michael, we already heard about the project. We just wanted to hear it from you. And they turned around and gave us a $2,000 grant. So that's going to be enough to almost get another child. We'll probably match that, finish that up, and get another child out of that center. In other words, help them get through the center. What we've done now is we've talked as a committee, and we're probably going to be looking for making this a ongoing project, and we'd like to get 4 to 6 children through that center this year if we can. 21. It costs us about 2,500 euro per child. That's a very long, extensive amount of massage therapy, boots, and special forming of shoes, therapy. Many different things are involved in that. Usually a 3 to 5 month process. And the first child that we started with is almost finished through that now, and now we're going to be able to pick up a second one. So they're opened their pocketbooks and came forward and are more than willing to help, and we really appreciate that. We know that some of you in the past have already donated to our project. Some of you have already done that in smaller amounts, but certainly willing to help us. Every ruble, every euro, every kopeck, dollar, cent helps, because it's going towards those projects to get those children to walk again. Those children deserve to have a life and walk. They're not able to do that now, and we're working towards it. So the project is going in the right direction. I also want to let you know that we're looking for additional opportunities to partner with other clubs. We recently partnered with a group in Shanghai and helped them with their project that they have going on there. They help people they help children get an operation. Children who otherwise may not live. They have a hole in their heart and it needs to be fixed. And that Rotary Club in Shanghai has been doing it for a long time. And now we contributed to help them also. So we're looking for people to partner with on projects. And that's sort of where we're going. We will have more in a few weeks. We'll have more update on our project that we're doing. And we have more people talking to us. We just got to work out the fine details as to what they want to help us with on our project. But we think it's better to take one child at a time, get through that, and then move to the next child. And we're hoping to get several this year. So we got one big project we're working on, a small group, but we appreciate your help and we still need help. So if you know of anybody who would like to contribute to that, and I know that Randall puts information about that in the message that goes out each week about our speakers. So we'll make sure it's in the next week's message again, just so that you know how to get hold of us about that. Next item, our next meeting coming up is going to be a week from now. And when we get there, we have another speaker. Our speaker on 3 February is going to be Dmitry Orlov. You heard Randall talk about him earlier. He has written several books and he seems to be a very dynamic individual. And I'm sure he's going to be a good speaker for us. And he's going to be talking about Russia 2021. So it should be interesting to hear another person, just like Paul today, from a different perspective, talking about where Russia's going and from their viewpoint, their perspective. It's always interesting to find out what other people think. Then on February 10th, a week later, we have Reinhard Kuhn, who's going to be here. He's going to be talking about, as Randall says, that mission to the moon by the Chinese and how he helped them. And I think it's going to be maybe humorous, not only interesting, but also humorous, who trying to figure out how this German was able to tie up with the Chinese in order to make this happen. So we're looking forward to both of those speakers the next 2 weeks. And then on the 17th,
not to the moon, but behind the moon. This was
no,
the
not
dark side.
Yeah, the other side. Yeah, the other side. Yeah, but it's still to the moon. It's still the moon, but it's the other side of the moon. Sorry, I might not have got the words quite right. You know him much better than I do, Gabriella, so you know more detail about that. You're the one that's hooked us up with that speaker. On the 17th of February, we will have a closed meeting. As Rotarians, you know that periodically we need to have a closed meeting to discuss internal affairs and take care of things. So for the next 2 weeks, we have speakers. We hope that you're going to come back. We hope that you're going to participate in listening to these people because I find them very, very interesting. And I think that we need to get out of our closed-in world we live in. For so long now, it's been a year. Doesn't feel like it, but it's already a year. Some of you think it feels like longer. We've kind of been closed down in each one of our countries through the pandemic, through the threat of it may have come here. You know, our governments have done so many things, just like in England, where they locked it down, opened it up, got worse, locked it down again, opened it back up. People are even talking about a third wave. It feels like we have been separated for so very, very long from the outside world. Not jumping on a plane, flying halfway around the world. I used to do that all the time, but not now. And I think that this is an opportunity for us on this screen in order to chat and to talk and so forth. Someone has recommended to us that we come up with breakout rooms in our meeting. And we don't know if we're going to do that or not, but we're thinking about it. And if we would have a breakout room, we got 24 people now. We'd probably break up into maybe 5 rooms, put 4 or 5 people in each breakout room and allow you to talk for 10 or 15 minutes among yourselves. Ask yourself questions and discuss different things because we have people from 7 different countries here. We have Rotarians and a couple non-Rotarians, but we have people who are interested in the same thing. So we may be doing that in the next week or two as we get near the end of the meeting, maybe taking the last 10 or 15 minutes and putting them in breakout rooms in smaller groups. We may try that. We haven't decided. It's something we're working on. But we certainly appreciate your being here and participating in what we have to do. I don't have any more to bring to the floor. I need to ask my members. Rami, do you have anything you'd like to bring to the floor?
I'm okay.
Okay. And Andres or Kai, anything you'd like to bring to the floor?
No, everything fine for tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Randall, anything you'd like to bring to the floor?
Just one thing, Michael. So Alexander Siboni, who's our past president and charter member of the club, he will be speaking 2 weeks after Reinhardt, and he'll be talking about the origin, the startup of our club in 2004, which should be very interesting. So we need a speaker the week before, and we need speakers following that.
The week before is the 17th. We'll have a closed meeting, and then on the 24th, he would be speaking. So we don't.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So we need speakers after that. Yes. Yes.
Right,
yes
afterwards.
right.
Yes. Okay. Andres, are you still here? Andres Bone, I don't see you on the screen. Oh yeah, on the bottom. Andres, did you have anything you want to bring up to the floor? And the people I'm calling, for the rest of you, the people I'm calling on now, these are all our active members, and I want to give them an opportunity to ask a question or make a comment if they have any. Walter, any comments you'd like to make?
No,
Sveta,
thank you very much, Michael. All great. Good.
Sveta
Very
has
good.
her hand up, Michael.
Sveta, yes, ma'am. Go ahead. You're muted. You
We
need to
can't hear you,
unmute.
Sveta.
Unmute, please. Unmute. There you go.
Okay,
This.
is it okay?
Yep.
Okay. Hello, dear friend. I'm very glad to be here in our Rotary meeting. And everybody know and that I'm from St. Petersburg, Leningrad. And I just want to say that today that's 27 January, and today is Happy Victory Day of Leningrad. So, dear friend, today marks the 77th anniversary of the complete liberation of Leningrad from the Nazi blockade. And we are very pleasant to invite you to our online meeting this Saturday. This will be the third Leningrad Victory organized meeting in Portland. Also, I see here my mentor and friend, Natalia Martinovna Verjan, and we will be talking about the Leningrad victory together today in radio broadcast and the Slavic Family radio station, and also on this Saturday. And if somebody will be interested, always welcome to ask me for the link to join our meeting for the Leningrad victory. We will be very appreciated to be together and talk about the special Heroes' Day in our world history. And I just want to thanks for Paul Goncharoff. Thank you very much for your great work. It was very pleasure to see you today here. Thank you very much, and happy Leningrad victory for the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Sveta. Sveta, in the chat in the bottom of the computer where it says chat, if you'll put the link that where we can contact you about that event on Saturday, put it in the chat box, then everybody can see it and they can copy it if they'd like to contact you. So that's what I would suggest. Put it in the chat box.
Oh, thank you very much, Michael. Can I please give my email, and then we can contact. It will be much better. Thank you very much. I will right now. Thank you.
Put it in the chat box. Very good. Okay. I'll open the floor up to anybody else. We got about 5 more minutes. Anybody else want to make a comment? Felix from Israel, or David from the US, or
yes.
Natalie? David, go ahead.
Yes. We don't have time, but remind me in the future to tell you about the anecdote from Arkhangelsk about the Chinese and the moonshot. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks from now, when that presentation is done. But I do want to say what a pleasure it's been to hear Paul talk about the matters he mentioned. And I'd like to follow up with you, Michael, about some of the things that are going on in Rotary internationally in terms of strengthening the intercountry committees that Paul might be interested in hearing about further down the road.
Okay. Yeah, David, you know you correspond with me, so send me information and we'll try and pass it on. We'll certainly do that. We'll try to be and that's one of the things that a small club can do, like us. We can be the intermediary between different groups and different countries and different cultures, because we do have such a mixed bag of folks here this evening in our group. So any other comments from the floor?
Well, only thing I wanted to say is that I'm having some difficulty with my equipment here, but if anyone wants to contact me for whatever reason, please, I guess if you guys wouldn't mind just forwarding on to me. I know you've got
I'll put your email in the chat right now.
sweet. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Randall can do that for you, so certainly.
Thank you.
Shanaz, you had your hand up?
I just want to comment about Paul's presentation. It was an excellent presentation and exposure for me to the corporate Russia. In the future, I would also like to be listening and tune into some of your projects, your 5 areas, 6 areas, or 7 areas of focus. I noticed that you're predominantly doing medical, and I would be very interested in knowing what other projects you're doing on the other Rotary areas of focus. But this was a great introduction to me to corporate Russia and to understand, and I'm trying to learn more of Russia. So this was a very nice free lesson for me. Thank you very much, Paul.
When you're able to travel, get on a plane, fly, and come to St. Petersburg.
There you go.
I was signed up to come for 2 weeks in 2020, and everything was canceled because of COVID.
Okay,
So
well, we'll see you when it opens up again. Natalie, you've been raising your hand there. I'm sorry you had to wait, Natalie. I mean, Natalia. Natalie, why do I want to keep calling you Natalia? I don't know. Natalie, go ahead. You're muted. You need to unmute, Natalie.
Mike, you can call me Natalia, Natasha. This is Russian style.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and as mentioned, our Svetlana, today's 77th anniversary of end of Leningrad blockade, and here there is good motto, proper motto: all gave some gave all. Никто не забыто и ничто не забыт. Nobody forgotten, nothing forgotten. And I'm thankful for our Rotary project, peace project in Russia, in entire world, because we're speaking about war, that's was. But now I think came time move on with alternative to war, peace. And now we have very good, unique project for Russia. It's called, Michael, you know that? And many times I share that information, Peace Pulse and Peace Projects. And we now making map which cities in Russia we can visit, help installation, peace poles for installation, and having opening ceremonies. And our club supported financially peace poles and dedication ceremonies. And I will be very thankful if your club also can help us reach out other St. Petersburg's clubs, share that our information, and 1 or 2, even next to benches, Rotary benches. It will be wonderful combination. Yeah, that's it for now.
I see another Russian club president on the screen, and Natalia is shaking her head, and you need to just contact us and tell us what you need, and then we can see specifically if we can meet that. When we get general requests, it's a problem because we don't have enough specifics as what people exactly need. And if we know exactly what you're looking for, exactly what you need, it's much easier. General broad requests are difficult to answer, difficult to reach. So if you have some specific ideas, certainly, Natalie, let us know and we'll be working. I know you correspond with myself and Randall, and we'll be happy to continue the correspondence and go forward. So,
okay, thanks a lot. Thank you.
I see the clock is just about, time is up almost. I heard a joke the other day, and I want to pass it on. It's a cute little joke. We all know in Russia and in most languages around the world that we talk about what kills a cat. What kills a cat? We say, oh, somebody asked a question. We say, why? And they say, because I'm curious. So you say, oh, be careful. Curiosity killed a cat. So with that in mind, here's the joke. This big cat who wasn't looking very well went to see the doctor. He went in, he got an examination, and this big cat comes out and he's sitting on a chair in the waiting room. He's not feeling very good. And the doctor walks out And that doctor looks at him and he says, I'm very sorry, Mr. Cat, but it's curiosity. So it sometimes pays to be curious and sometimes not. If you're a cat, you probably need to worry about that, but we're not cats, so we can be curious. You should always be curious, ask questions at our meeting, open up the communication lines and find out what you want to know. If the sources are here, either here or online around the world, you can find out so much information today. So please come back and see us again. We're going to have good speakers for you, and we appreciate everybody being on board. We will send out, I won't, Randall will, send out a message to all of you next week about a reminder about our meeting and about our speaker, and your smiling face is always, always welcome to come back to our club. And when all this travel restrictions get removed, we're expecting on seeing some of you in St. Petersburg, Russia. So we'll see you when it happens. I need to close the meeting. The meeting is officially closed. We will stay on board for about another 10 or 15 minutes to chat if anybody wants to stay on board, but otherwise our meeting is officially closed. Thank you all very, very much for coming. Thank you.